How you feeling, Steph?
Good, good. I can't wait to see the castle and see what it's about. So, ready to endorse some stuff, but ready to see it.
You ready for the intensity?
No, I'm not. I'm actually not, but gotta see it. Got to.
No, you got to, right?
Yes, for
yes,
sure.
Yes, definitely. You have to. You have to.
Africa.
Yes, sir. Africa.
I have the Africa for you.
Yeah, that's nice. Which way is the entrance?
I think goes that way.
All right.
Anything you want, make she go do. No, I say on pay. True love, I thought you on share. Oh, friend, I on share. So let me be a I want you to be my own. They me drama, Julie. So, me, so, me, that's why I'll be holding tonight. Put your loving on me. Love the sweet pass on it. The same agenda back for ground for money. Mami Lamle, will you be my Anna? You are sweeter than Diana. For me, for you are my fan. Baby, you be a mama. I'll take you to Shogana. Forever you my Anna. So don't me Miss me you are so wonderful. Baby, you are powerful. So don't me Miss me you are so wonderful. Baby, you are powerful. You are so wonderful. Baby, you are powerful. You are so wonderful. Baby, you are powerful.
I'm a little indifferent, you know? It's amazing to be back here, but definitely has an eerie feeling about it still. And I don't know, I'm excited, I'm nervous, and a little bit of everything right now before we start this tour.
Good afternoon to you. I officially welcome you all to the historical Cape Coast Castle. My name is Kojo Nyan, and I'll be your guide. The tour will take us about 45 minutes, and throughout this 45 minutes, we shall visit the male slave dungeon, the female slave dungeon, the condemned cell, the punishment cell, the courtyard of the castle, the door of no return, the door of return. From there, we'll move upstairs, see the Palaver Hall where auction was being done. From there, we'll bring the guided tour to an end. But before we begin with a tour of the castle, I'm going to give you a brief history about the castles we have in Ghana and in the transatlantic slave trade on the west coast of Africa. Basically, in Ghana, there are 3 castles dotted along the coast of Ghana. We have St. George's Castle in Elmina, built by the Portuguese in 1482. We also have the Christiansborg Castle in Osu, Accra, built by the Danes in 1661. Finally, we have Cape Coast Castle, built by the British in 1665. Out of these 3 castles, Elmina Castle or the St. George's Castle, that is the biggest and then the oldest European structure in tropical West Africa. Where we are at the moment, that is the smallest among the 3. However, Cape Coast Castle itself, it was once built as a fort known as the Karelosberg Fort by the Swedish in 1653. Later, the Danes came in for the Swedish, they drove them away and then took over the fort. The Dutch also came in, they also fought the Danes and also drove them away. Following the subsequent Anglo-Dutch war between the British and then the Dutch, the British also came in, they defeated the Dutch and then took away the fort. So basically, it was the British who developed the fort into a castle status as we see today. And so the land on which the Cape Coast Castle sits on now, it has changed hands for about 5 times. It started with the Portuguese, the Swedish, the Danes, the Dutch, and then finally the British. Cape Coast Castle, as it exists today, it was built over a period of 300 years. The trade officially ended in England in 1807, but then those of the British inside this very castle, they refused to end the trade in 1807, rather continued with the trade till 1833, which was finally abolished in this very castle. The trade lasted for more than 400 years, more than 4 centuries. So please, I'm going to pause for a while. If there are questions you'd love to ask, please, you can do so before we begin with the tour. So please, any questions?
What about the children? You said the men and women were separated. What about children?
Yes, the children, they were held together with the women, but then the idea wasn't to capture children. They got children in the castle as a result of capturing the whole family. If the whole family is being captured, that is when they intend to get kids in here. But then the kids, they were held together with the women. This is a cell. It is not an ordinary cell, but a condemned cell. It looks as if the punishment given to the captives in the dungeons itself, it wasn't enough. Enslaved African men who fought for their freedom whilst they were in the castle, they were seen to be stubborn, aggressive, rebellious. They were all locked up in this very cell. Nobody went through this side and then came back alive. Less than 72 hours in here, nobody is going to survive in this very cell. So very soon we'll move in and I'll explain to you why nobody survived in here. But before we move in here, of all the doors, of all the fittings we have inside the castle, this door is the only original door left in the castle, a little above 2 centuries. It is made of pitch pine timber, and then just at the back, it has been covered with copper. Please keep your head down. Please keep your head down.
I can't see.
Can I use a flashlight? Sure.
You can put on a flashlight.
Oh, okay.
It's not. I need more than one.
Okay. I see.
Alright, so that is a condemned cell. This is where captured enslaved African men were held. There were 3 doors leading to this side. The first 2 doors in the middle, it has been taken off, left to the last one. Even the last one, the door, it is still open. You can still feel the heat in here. And so you can imagine all the 3 doors are locked up. No food, no water was given to them. They were still in chains and in shackles, out of suffocation and in starvation. Nobody survived in this very cell. Nobody comes in here and goes back alive because of the conditions that existed in here. And so all these markings you see on the ground, these markings was done by the captives with their chains and shackles. And so out of struggling and pain in here, they had to scratch the ground with their chains and shackles. All right, so before we move into the dungeons, I would like us to have a look at this plaque. This plaque was unveiled by the former president of the United States, President Barack Obama, and then the First Lady Michelle Obama, on the 11th day of July 2009. Michelle Obama traced her ancestral roots to this very castle, and then that was the purpose of the visit. That is how come this has been pasted out here. But then there is another plaque over here. I want you to take a photo of this plaque. I'll explain this before the tour ends. going to move inside. 3 steps down, the floor slopes. It's a bit slippery in here. Please let us take our time whilst you move. Please come with me. Alright, so very soon we'll move down and see what is inside the dungeon. But now, this is where captured enslaved African men were held. This very dungeon, it was designed to hold as many as 1,000 men in here for a period of time. They were not allowed to move outside. They defecated, urinated, vomited. They sat and slept around their own mess. But then the whole idea wasn't meant for them to ease themselves on the ground. But then rather, they used to have wooden buckets or receptacles just at the corners for them to ease themselves. But because they were not entering this wooden bucket on a regular basis, it sometimes get full, and then they were left with no option to ease themselves on the ground. They slept on a bare floor. Others were sleeping on top of the others. That is the only source of light and ventilation up there. And so let us look at something in here. That is how dark the place was. It was more darker as you see now, because the main entrance will be shut down. Once the main entrance is shut down, the whole place was very dark. It was very difficult to even identify whoever was next to you then. And so you could imagine people being in here for 2 weeks to 3 months without moving out, defecating, doing all sort of things in here. What is going to happen to them? Many people died in the dungeon. May those who died in the dungeons rest in peace. Alright, so that is the floor of the dungeon. That is the floor of the dungeon. And so the feces was piled up from this very side to this very level before the excavation work was done. So that was the level of the feces in here. And so all these rooms we have in here, these rooms are sacred rooms where the souls and spirit of our ancestors are still in here. If you have good eyes, you can see them. If you have good ears, you can hear them talk. They are not here to harm us. They are only here for us to experience what they went through. We entered the first chamber. We have a second chamber just behind us. We're in the third chamber now. Before I continue, let me say this. Christianity in the country started in the castles. The Catholic Church started in the Elmina Castle. The Presbyterian Church also started in the Christianborg Castle in Accra. The Methodist Church started from this very castle. Finally, the first English church, or the first Anglican church, also known as the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel, SPG Church, also started from this castle. The SPG Church, or the Anglican Church, sat just right above the male slave dungeon. And so above this very dungeon, there was a church on top of this very dungeon. And so whilst there were others up there preaching the word of God, singing praises to God, preaching love your neighbor as yourself, there were others in the dungeons dying and suffering. But then the big question we need to ask ourselves is that why should they even build a church on top of a slave dungeon? When you visit the Elmina Castle, they also have a church sitting just right above the female slave dungeon with a quotation, Psalm 132 verse 13, which says that Zion is the Lord's resting place and there she will rest forever. And so indeed, if we truly have heaven and hell, perhaps they are trying to teach us about the concept of heaven and hell. Other than that, I personally do not understand why they must build a church just right above the dungeon. I cannot tell why.
as a church, or was it some other structure that then was converted?
It was built as a church.
And who were the members of that church?
As a matter of fact, no black person was allowed into the church. The church was only meant for the white people, the white missionaries, the governors, and the officials in the castle. They were the ones attending the church. Please, you can have a look at it. Hold your gadget very firmly, please.
So what is this?
It's a water reservoir. So during the time of slavery, there was nothing like pipe-on water in here. They had to create this open space over here. Whenever it rains, they would have to harvest the rainwater in here. That was the water they used for cooking, for bathing, for everything in the castle then. But then as I speak with you now, it has been connected to pipe-on water, as you can see from this side. And so sometimes we do open this tap to fill this water reservoir so that whenever there is shortage of water within the community, we allow the indigenous people in the town to fetch water back home. It is 18 feet down.
Tell me what you need from me now. I'm not what you need to be now, cause I'm done with it now. No more damages now. Said, tell me what you need from me now. I'm not what you need to be now, cause I'm done with it now. No more damages now, no more damages. Back then when I was a baby girl, I was yours and you were my world. Tell me what you wanna do for me now. Take you down and I will hold you to run my race, cause you run it right there. Run my race, cause you take it right there. I've been down, I've been running right there. I've been out, could you take it back there? Pull up tonight, I might be risky. Buy me stomach, forget the whiskey. But you still wanna get back with me. You tryna be the one and deal with. Don't got my phone, you're not a madman. You missed the way in that the one chance.
The Portuguese, they were the first European nation to arrive in West Africa. In 1471, the Portuguese got to this part of the coast. One thing the Portuguese were looking out for was gold, and in the rate at which they were getting gold from this part of the coast gave them an impression that it was in abundance. And so this part of the coast was named as the Gold Coast. From the Gold Coast, they traveled down to La Côte d'Ivoire. In La Côte d'Ivoire, they got a lot of ivory from La Côte d'Ivoire. Hence, La Côte d'Ivoire was also referred to as the Ivory Coast. From there, they went on to Benin. In Benin, they got a lot of slaves in Benin. Benin was also referred to as the Slave Coast. And so in the early 17th century, the Portuguese really enjoyed their trading in West Africa. But that is the end of the tunnel. It has been blocked from this side as well. All the men would have to walk through till they get to this very point. The women needs to join the men in here. This side will be the final exit into the ships. But then sometimes the waves from the ocean was sometimes very rough. So this side has to be blocked off. After this side was blocked off, they later created the door of no return, where nobody went through that door and then came back into the castle again. Alright, so that is a female slave dungeon. Two separate chambers for the women. This side is the very first chamber. We have the second chamber just opposite us. Each chamber held 150 women together with their children in here. They were also not allowed to move outside. They defecated, urinated, vomited, had their menstruation in here. They sat and slept around their own mess. The three rows up here, that is the only source of light and ventilation for the captives. Please, do you remember in the male dungeon, I made mention of a drainage on the ground that carries away the liquid waste. But over in here, there is nothing like a drainage. After defecating, doing all sort of things in here, whenever it rains and then it happens that the rainwater has to come in here, the rainwater comes into the dungeon, mixed up with the already mess in here, and then they will still have to be sitting in. Whenever the governor wants to rape any of the women in here, the governor comes with a servant. They stand right in front of the door The governor looks through and points at any of them. The servant comes in and pick her out. She'll be taken to another place where she'll be given good food to eat, put on nice attire, take a nice bath. From there, she'll be handed over to the governor. After the governor is done abusing her, she'll be brought in here back again. But then as time goes on, if they realize she's pregnant, they will still have to come for her. The British had stone houses within the community. That is where these pregnant women were taken to. 3 months after delivery, officials in the castle would have to take the baby. The woman would then have to return back in here again. But in those of the women who were not fortunate, but rather found pregnant in the ships, they were all dumped into the ocean. Alright, so that is a final exit point for enslaved Africans. From this very point, all hopes were lost. Enslaved Africans who went through this door lost contact with Africa. They lost their names, they lost their identity whilst they went through this very door. The door wasn't big as you see now. It was very short and then very narrow. So before one could even move through this door at that time, he or she needs to bow. And so whenever you get the opportunity to visit the Elmina Castle, you will see the original door of no return. Very, very short, very narrow at the Elmina Castle. But please remember, not everyone who went through this door survived or made a journey successfully. From wherever that these enslaved Africans were captured along West Africa, they would have to walk barefooted to the castles. On the way to the castles, some of them lost their lives because of inadequate food and water. Others fell into traps. Others were attacked by wild animals. Those of them who were found sick and weak, they were left on the way to the castles. Only few people made it to the castle. The few who made it to the castle alive, once again the conditions in the dungeons, it wasn't the best. So many died in the dungeons. Those who survived the dungeons came out here. They had to go through this door. They went through the door, they saw the ships, they saw the Atlantic Ocean. They never had an idea as to where they were taking them to. Some of them voluntarily decided to jump overboard into the ocean just to prevent themselves from going to unknown destination. Whenever the ships were overloaded, they needed to make sure the ships become stable on the ocean. And so instead of them to offload items in the ships into the ocean, no, rather they would offload enslaved Africans into the ocean. So many people lost their lives when they went through this door. The worst part of the journey was the Middle Passage, where human beings lied side by side, unable to move or sit up. Human beings defecating and vomiting. One could not even get their own hands to even clean their mouth. It was not unusual to wake up, see the person chained next to you dead, sometimes decomposed. Many people lost their lives when they went through this side. But then as to the number of people taken away from Africa to the Americas, we do not know, but always it has been estimated. And so I quote from the late president of Guinea. He said 60 million enslaved Africans were taken from Africa to the Americas. Out of the 60 million, only 12 million survived the voyage. 48 million perished crossing the Atlantic Ocean, excluding those who died in the dungeons, those who died on the way to the castle. So you can imagine the number of people who lost their lives during the period of the 400 years. But I'm going to open up the door. Let us step out here. Let's see what is beyond this door. From this very point, all the captives would have to move out here. Once they move out here, the ships were already parked over here, but this part of the beach, it is very shallow from this side. And so bigger ships were not coming closer. Bigger ships would have to dock 70 to 100 meters away from this side. They convey the captives with smaller boats to the bigger ones, and then the journey continued from that very point. The floating casket the Europeans refers to as ships had names like Jesus, Glory of Africa, God is Able, Brotherhood, Liberty. These were names for slave ships. But let's have a look on top of the door. Please, what do you see? Door of Return. The same door, it has been named as the Door of Return 1998 when Ghana celebrated Emancipation Day for the very first time. Two bones of two enslaved Africans were exhumed from New York and in Jamaica, representing the people of the diaspora. That is Samuel Carson and Madam Crystal. They've flown the two bones down to Ghana. When you are traveling from Accra to Cape Coast, there is a village along the way called Abanze where you can locate Fort Amsterdam just up on the hill. From Accra to Abanze, they traveled by road. But from Abanze to this part of the castle, all the crew decided not to travel by road again. They will only continue the journey to the castle through the Atlantic Ocean. Why through the Atlantic Ocean? It is because the ancestors were taken to the Americas through the Atlantic Ocean. If the descendants of the ancestors are returning back home, then there is the need for them to also use the Atlantic Ocean.
I lay my life, don't need you with me. Yeah. So tell me what you need from me now. I know what you need to be now, cause I'm done with it now. Know my damages now. So tell me what you need from me now. You know where I need to be now, cause I'm done with it now. No more damages, no.
How you feeling, stuff?
It's heavy. Back there in the dungeon, shed a little tears. It's very overwhelming. Very. That these people was captured and then we just here looking at it.
Hey, yeah, 100% agree.
Tell me what you need from me now. I know what you need to be now, cause I'm done with it now. Know my damages now. So tell me what you need from me now. You know where I need to be now, cause I'm done with it now. No more damages.
How you feeling, Josh? How you feeling?
I'm good, man. Feeling strong. So,
Feel you on that.
a lot of wickedness here, but it's a lot of strength.
A lot of strength. How you feeling,
We
Corey?
shouldn't be existing.
Right.
Like the resilience of my people is mind-blowing. There should be no black people in America. Nobody should have made it. It's pretty incredible.
After seeing what they went through? Whew.
Most of us wouldn't have made it.
Nah, definitely.
Tikuno betekpa, minu mienu bebumpa, ende bemampa kasa. Siyana juru betekpa, betikbu betekpa, minu mienu bebumpa, ende bemampa kasa. Yeah, odo biyo, sodo biyo, minu mienu bewo, dobi tesa wo, bedroom commando. Fire, baby fire, squeeze my tomato.
There is a fort just right above the hill. Please, can you all see? That is Fort William. The British built Fort William, Fort Victoria to serve as a watch tower for the castle. And so whenever there are enemies attacking the castle, whether by land or by sea, the soldiers up there, they will be the first people to see them. They will then have to communicate to the soldiers in here for them to get prepared. They use symbols and an object in communication. So for example, in the morning if they want to communicate, all they do is to wave a red flag in the morning as a sign of communication. In the afternoon they use mirror. They turn the surface of the mirror towards the sun. they get a reflection down here. In the evening, they use torchlights. That was the only place you could find light as a den. And so in Cape Coast here, that is the highest point in the town. If you're up there, you can see every part of Cape Coast from that very angle. So that is Fort William. Let's see the other fort from this side.
So that's the communication room that we just passed.
Yes, exactly. Just below. There's another fort just right above the hill. Can you see? Yeah. There's a fort just right above the hill.
Why you promising you know when why you want guy you know get dope one no soon do why you want champion when you know it you want fata na chroma shit why you want champion when you know it you want fata na chroma shit. You say you want body yazo, see the trouble tanker from my back on Apple. Yeah, Charlie body me a gam you for hot cash, full of days now show back. What's the casamo basa, chalky for one corner, la bugger be reflect dollar. Baby, over my dead body, bro. And show on the don't holla.
Alright, so that is a Palava Hall. This is where buying and selling of human beings took place. So before anybody at all will be taken into the dungeon, the person would first of all have to visit the site for European doctors and nurses to examine and then check his or her fitness level. From there, that person will be bought and then taken into the tent. So basically, the whole of this area was an auction block for the British. This is where they determine who to buy and who not to buy. But please remember, not everyone who was brought up here was bought. They were brought in here by middlemen. And so anybody who wasn't bought from this side, whoever brought that person in here must take that person back. The middlemen, they were not willing to do so. They moved a bit inland, they abandoned them on the way, and then they continue with the journey. And so even if you are not bought from this side, your chances of surviving was still low, because you could be in the forest, you end up eaten up by an animal. So the whole of this area was an auction block for the British. The big question we all need to ask ourselves is that the dungeons are empty. The cells are also empty now. Nobody is in the dungeon. Nobody is in the cell. Still, the question lies that, is slavery over? No, slavery, it is not over. It is still going on in different ways, in different forms. But please, as you've come here today to learn about this history, let us all go back home, educate our families, our friends about what we've learned today. Let's avoid discrimination. Let's say no to racism. That is the only way we can make this world a better and a safer place. For whatever that occurred in this very castle, it has already occurred. There is nothing any of us can do to change the past. But then it is for us as individuals to pick lessons from the past. And then as we move into the future, it is our duty to all make sure that such injustice never repeats itself again. We are different colors, but we are still one people. And so this is where we'll end our guided tour of the castle. I wish you all safe journey back home. So we'll meet some other day, some other time. Thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. Oasis Beach. Josh, how you feeling, my brother?
Good. Strong.
Strong. I love that answer.
Shimmy you, send a picture. Me say what I am do, so come and wanna what do me you.
Right? Much better seat. This is magical.
What'd you say?
It's magical.
Magical.
Very much so.
magical, right?
Huh?
I've heard strong, magical. What do you have to say, Stephanie?
This whole experience. Ooh.
Good catch.
You definitely had endurance, I'll say that.
Yeah, no, for sure.
That's for sure.
For sure. What about you, Pamela? How was your experience?
Wow, it was a little overwhelming for me.
Overwhelming?
A little bit overwhelming, man. But like the gravity, like it was a little over. But I mean, I'm so glad I went. Like,
You said the gravity?
Me too.
What do you mean?
Gravity.